It was a mild and muddy afternoon in the winter of 2009 in Coldwater, Michigan. An elementary school teacher, wife, and mother is found shot to death in the bathroom of her family's farmhouse. The house has been ransacked. There are items missing. Her husband, who returned home to find her, is inconsolable. The detectives believe that the scene contained a series of red flags. The victim found in the shower, but the bathtub is dry. An intruder and thief appears to have broken in, but there is no mud from outside anywhere on the floor. The husband had an airtight alibi. Unless, of course, he had committed the crime covertly hours earlier, before even leaving the house. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin, and this is Just Thought Lounge. The case we're looking at today is one built on speculation. Certain evidence at the crime scene points in one direction, statements from witnesses suggest another. And then there are the avenues of inquiry that have never been properly examined. Let's take a look. Thomas Foley was born in Coldwater, Michigan, but spent the early years of his life moving frequently. Tom's father, Steve, was in the US Navy. But it was Coldwater, where his grandparents lived, that Tom thought of as his home. After his parents divorced, Tom moved back to the small town and attended high school there, where he became known as a bit of a small town hero, scoring the game-winning shot at his school's regional basketball championship. Only a few years later, during his spring break from college in 1991, Tom met the confident and beautiful woman that would become his wife, Darlene Weber. 2 years after that, the two were married. Darlene, who often went by either the shortened Dar or Dee Dee, had by all accounts a very strong personality. She was known to be a ferocious advocate for anyone in need, particularly children. A few years into their marriage, Dar gave birth to their only child, a son named Heath. The couple had decided early on that when they had children, one of them would stay home full-time, at least in the early years. As fate would have it, Tom took on that role. Dar had a well-paying position as a second-grade teacher. The couple were able to purchase a large farmhouse located on the outskirts of town. The property needed some work, but Tom was fixing things up. He was also staying at home as a full-time dad. Saturday, February 7th, 2009, was Heath Foley's 10th birthday. His parents had a party planned for him later that day. In the morning, his father took him to a basketball game in nearby Marshall, and in the afternoon, he played at the farm with his best friend, a boy named Skylar. Tom left in his pickup truck to take both boys to the party at another friend's house in nearby Union City. It was about a 20-minute drive. They left at around 3:15 that afternoon. Dar was left behind to take a shower. She was meant to pick up 3 other children at their homes and arrive just before 5. But Dar never arrived at the party. By 4:50, Tom was already expressing deep concern. It was extremely unlike his wife to be late. Tom called the home of the first boy that Dar was meant to collect. Then he phones the home of the second friend, and finally, the third. No, he is told, Dar had not turned up yet. Curiously, the one place that Tom did not call was his own house to see if Darlene would pick up. She didn't have a cell phone. By 5:30, Tom arrived back at the farmhouse to check on her. There, he made a horrific discovery.
What's the problem? Get an ambulance. Please, hurry. I will get an ambulance, but what is going on with her? She's in the shower, I don't know. Her head is gone. Her head is gone?
When law enforcement arrived at the house, one of the first observations they made was that the bathtub was dry. It did not appear to any of the officers that the shower had been running in the minutes before their arrival. Detective James Carbon was put in charge of the investigation. The detective observed that the door leading to the back porch had a broken window caused by a now broken beer bottle, possibly taken from a pile of bottles next to the porch. The house had been ostensibly broken into. Sections of the home had been ransacked. The desk that Tom observed in the living room was missing some important financial papers alongside credit information. Some credit cards had also been taken. These would eventually be located later at a gas station elsewhere in Branch County. From the bathroom, prescription drugs have been taken from the medicine cabinet. A video game system, a PlayStation 3, was also missing, and jewelry from the upstairs bedroom was unaccounted for. There were multiple high-value items that remained, including a large-screen television and other electronics. The scene was not adding up for Detective Carbon. Why kill the homeowner but leave so many valuable items behind? His assessment of the scene was that Darlene was likely attacked by someone who knew her. There were no defensive wounds on her hands, so it is likely she never saw the weapon until the very last second. She was taken by surprise. The damage that the killer had done suggested either a personal motive or an outright execution. Detective Carbon didn't believe that thieves would carry around a bulky shotgun as their weapon of choice. Most thieves choose smaller weapons, maybe knives, that will not inhibit their ability to carry stolen items. Nor was it sensible, thought the detective, for thieves to murder the homeowner when they are in the shower, and therefore likely unaware that anyone else was even in the house. Outside, the winter weather in early February had turned unseasonably warm. The snow on the ground had melted, turning the grounds of the Foley's farm into slush and mud. Despite the recent weather, responding officers did not notice messy floors inside the home. There was no mud or any other indication of the flooring having been cleaned up. They did not identify any footprints formed in the mud outside either. There was a circumstantial case suggesting that whoever had killed Darlene Foley had already been inside the house. The break-in could have been staged. This theory, however, did not account for how the missing items had left the property. Already at this early stage, suspicions were directed towards Tom Foley. He was taken into the police station straight from the house and questioned. It had only been a few hours since he found his wife dead in the bathtub.
She's in the shower? Okay.
I don't know.
It's all right. Take your time. If you need, there's a whole box of Kleenex back there too, man.
Heath and Skylar were playing the PlayStation in the living room around 2:30 p.m. that day, when Tom instructed them to go play outside or in the barn while he prepared to leave for the party. The boys were out in the back near one of the barns when they heard a loud sound coming from near to the house. Skylar noted that the noise came from the back porch next to the bathroom window. Notably, he described the sound as glass breaking.
Yeah, when we were outside running across the barns, there was a big crash way in the back of the house.
What did it sound?
It sounded like breaking glass and a bunch of things falling. The vase just...
It was a loud sound.
Based on these initial recollections, Detective Carbon believed that the boys had been auditory or ear witnesses to the crime. They may not have known it, but the loud noise that they heard must have been the sound of the shotgun. And it fit with the scenario that he had already posited. The murder had been personal. They did not find mud or footprints indicating that anyone from outside the house had entered. The burglary had been staged. That Tom Foley had an alibi for the whole of that afternoon meant that he must have shot his wife before he even left the house.
I know this is gonna be difficult, but I mean, what do you see? You said you grabbed her?
There's stuff all over the wall. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. So after you grab her, you then wheel around and call 911 then? Okay. Did you hear anybody else in the house? Did you hear anything else going on?
No.
Okay.
A small stain of Darlene's blood was found on Tom's shirt. According to a forensic expert, the stain was not from blood spatter, but from contact with blood. Darlene had been shot at short range, with the gun about 6 inches from her head when fired. However, no gunpowder, blood spatter, or other physical evidence was found on Tom Foley or his shirt. His pants, however, were not taken by law enforcement or tested. Both Heath and Skylar told investigators that Tom was wearing the same clothing throughout the entire day. Most importantly, they did not notice him cleaning up or change his clothing between the time they heard the loud noise from the barn and when they left for the party. Had he shot his wife before even leaving the house, as the police now believed, he managed to do so without getting a hint of evidence on his shirt or person. In the days that followed, there would be more discoveries made at the Foley farmhouse. A single work glove found on the ground outside the broken door used by the potential burglars was collected for forensic testing. Tom Foley told the police that it was not his glove, and it had not been on the ground outside the door when he left with the boys that afternoon. DNA testing on the glove returned the presence of 2 unknown individuals, a male and a female. The DNA did not match Tom, Darlene, or Heath Foley. Perhaps the most significant discovery came a day following the murder, after 12 hours of searching inside the home utilizing a police dog trained in detecting weapons. It was a plastic bag, located on the floor near to the center of the basement. The bag contained 3 shotgun shells. Although there were no fingerprints on the shells, a print of Tom Foley's right index finger was found on the outside of the bag. Tom insisted that he had never owned or even used a shotgun. He had no idea where these shells had come from. He was asked about the bag 17 days after the murder in a second interview. To this point, Tom had not been asked if he had an explanation for the loud noise that both boys heard from the barn that afternoon. He would not be presented with that evidence against him for months.
Downstairs in the basement,
Okay,
we found a Dunham's bag
okay,
that had some shotgun shells in it.
okay.
Have you ever seen that before?
No.
Okay. When I say down in the basement, I'm talking the Michigan basement that goes down from the
Right.
bathroom that goes down in there. There was a Dunham bag that had 3 shotgun shells in it. We found down there. And I know when I talked to you before, you said that nobody was a hunter or anything like
No,
that.
we're not.
You never saw the shells.
No.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
Never saw the bag down there or anything like that.
No.
Okay. But yeah, we found those down in that basement.
Okay. I mean, I'll go down there, but, it's usually just to get, because we got a freezer down there. Just to get stuff from the freezer.
Investigators were never able to link the shells definitively to the murder weapon, because the shotgun, like so many other things in this case, was missing. As the weeks went by, Darlene's family became increasingly suspicious of Tom. It was clear to them that he was the focus of the murder investigation. And the thought process was pretty clear. Who else could it have been? Then, investigators caught a lucky break when they spoke with Darlene's brother, Brian, and they discovered that he owned a shotgun. A shotgun that had been stolen from him several months earlier, but he had failed to report it missing. He told police that he did not report it because he believed that either a friend or a family member had taken it from him. They had found a link to the likely murder weapon. On March 6th, 2009, Tom Foley was arrested and charged with murder and illegal use of a weapon.
I'm very confident about the case. We wouldn't have charged him if we weren't confident about the case that we have.
He stood trial later that year. Detective Carbon testified that police believed Tom killed his wife, took the boys to the party, then returned home and ransacked parts of the house himself. When eventually asked about the loud bang thought to have been the fatal gunshot blast, Tom had explained that he had been carrying a glass pane from one of the barns into the house. He had been slowly repairing these, and they were delicate. On that occasion, he had dropped the window pane, causing the glass to shatter and the heavy wooden frame to hit the porch, causing a loud bang. Tom stated that Heath ran from the barn at that time to check on what had happened. He told his son that it was glass from the window. Then he cleaned it up. As time went on, Heath's recollection changed. In later interviews, Heath also suggested the noise could have been a gunshot.
Our neighbors just like shoot guns. I was like, maybe a gunshot, maybe our neighbors like glass broke down. It was one of those two things.
At trial, both boys testified to the sound they heard.
Really, really loud sound that made my ears hurt because I have like really sensitive ears.
Okay, it made your ears hurt?
Yeah, like when your ears hurt, it kind of makes them like ring inside, and that's what kind of happened with my ears.
After speaking with the Webbers, police had come to believe that there had been trouble in the Foley marriage. Tom, unemployed and unhappy, was poised to gain $280,000 in life insurance should his wife pass away. In addition, they uncovered two women who had romantic encounters with Tom. The first was a teacher in Union City, where Dar had also taught. She said that Tom had admitted to having romantic feelings for her and was unhappy in his marriage. She had rejected him. The second was a family friend, a woman who had visited with Tom only 2 weeks after Darlene was killed to offer her condolences. That encounter had led to an embrace, one that abruptly ended.
And it was stopped.
All right. Who tried and who stopped?
He tried and we both stopped.
The second encounter was deemed prejudicial by the trial judge, and the testimony was never introduced to the jury. The prosecution maintained that Tom's behavior to other women was representative of his true feelings and the real state of the marriage. It formed part of his motive to be rid of his wife. The defense argued that this was nonsense. Tom's feelings for the teacher had been a brief dalliance 3 years prior to the murder. Tom subsequently told his wife about it. The two sought counseling and worked through it. Not every marriage that hits a bump in the road leads to murder, they argued. But the jury believed that the prosecution's theory was sound. They had ear witnesses, shotgun shells with a connected fingerprint, circumstantial evidence around the house, and a motive. On November 27, 2009, Tom Foley was convicted of murder and use of a weapon to commit a felony.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder.
He was sentenced to life in prison. While Tom was in custody, there were new developments in the case. In fact, these were emerging even as the trial was underway. Transactions amounting to approximately $4,200 were made on a credit card that had been set up using the information stolen from the Foley farmhouse. A person or persons in Brooklyn, New York, had been using the stolen paperwork long after Tom Foley had been placed in police custody. A private investigator tracked the online usage of the cards to an address in Michigan, where he found an unhelpful woman who claimed her boyfriend must have sold the data. She said she knew nothing more about it. At this point, police already had their murderer in custody and indicted. There was no follow-up performed on these leads by Detective Carbon or his colleagues. One day after the verdict was reached, Tom's defense team was contacted by a neighbor of Tom Foley's named Jeanette Moore. Jeanette told them that at 4:45 p.m. on the day of the murder, she saw an older model white car driving quickly from the Foley driveway. The driver, she said, was 18 to 20 years old. She provided a description that was rendered into a sketch. The man she saw looked nothing like Tom Foley. Within a week of the verdict, Tom's lawyers had filed a motion for a new trial based on this new evidence.
She said, "Mom, there was a lady murdered there." And I said, "What?" I said, "My God, maybe that whoever that I seen is the one that did it.
If you thought at that point they didn't have the right person charged, why didn't you come forward?
I was afraid.
Jeanette explained that she had also been struggling with health issues, which negatively impacted her and further exacerbated her anxieties. After Jeanette came forward, the new evidence suggesting persons other than Tom Foley had committed the murder seemed to snowball. Another set of witnesses lent weight to Jeanette's recollection. A married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Brunel, saw a white sedan leaving the Foley driveway at 4 p.m. Then a third witness recounted that at about 3:30, he saw a dark, possibly black-colored SUV parked near the barn. He knew the vehicle was not owned by the Foley family. Tom Foley was granted a new trial, which began in July 2011. The Michigan Court of Appeals had ruled that given the new witness testimony, a second jury was likely to acquit Tom Foley of the charges. But that outcome was still far from a foregone conclusion. Perhaps the most damning testimony at the second trial, yet again, came from the boys, Heath and Skylar. Over the 2 years that his father spent in prison leading up to his second trial, Heath had been in the care of his mother's family. The Webbers quite rightly wanted justice for Darlene. How much this desire for justice aimed at Tom impacted Heath's recollections or Skylar's subsequent interpretation of the noise they heard cannot be certain. But when it came to testify yet again, both boys had become more confident in what they had heard that day.
Last year at church camp, for one of our activities, we fired shotguns, and it most resembled that sound.
Police later scoured the area outside of the porch for glass shards in order to verify or disprove Tom's story. At that time, they found nothing. Yet a photo of the area taken by their own team said differently. When reviewing the evidence after the first trial, Tom's defense team spotted a shard of glass in a police photo taken during the investigation. They found it near the porch in the exact location where Tom had claimed he dropped the window pane. When they matched that glass to the frame, it was a perfect fit. They called this discovery their Perry Mason moment. However, testimony from another member of the Webber family threatened to render this discovery useless. Amber Webber, Dar's niece and one of Brian's daughters, had been very close to her aunt. She recounted how Aunt Dar had told her a full week before her death that Tom had dropped a glass pane on the porch. The glass was already there. It proved nothing. However, Amber's testimony was based on unverifiable statements from Darlene. The judge determined that the statements were hearsay and deemed inadmissible. In addition to the newfound glass shard, the defense called their new lineup of witnesses, beginning with Jeanette Moore, to the stand.
As I approached this white car, come racing out forward, and if I hadn't braked, I would have hit him. A 20-year-old kid, had real black hair, and his face was real white, and he was clenching the wheel just like this, and I thought, he's crazy, he's going to kill somebody.
I caught the glance of a black Ford SUV crossover vehicle.
It could have been a white car, cream car, it was just a light-colored car.
The prosecution's case had been frustrated by a few of the judge's rulings. They had been unable to introduce the woman who Tom had kissed and embraced so soon after his wife's death. They had been unable to put Amber on the stand to counter the broken glass pane evidence. They had also been unable to account for why so many witnesses saw strange vehicles at the Foley farm that afternoon.
They became so focused in relation to Tom Foley that whenever there was an effort to follow up a legitimate lead, they chose not to.
Who planned this murder months in advance? Tom Foley. Who stood to gain from Dee Dee's death? Tom Foley.
When the second jury returned with their verdict, the appellate judges were proven correct. Tom Foley was found not guilty of murdering his wife. After 2 years in prison, he was released and given back custody of his son.
considered a lot of other things that I thought the first jury should have given more importance to, and that was the timeline. It was almost impossible for him to have done what they said.
In the years since Tom's release, there have been several theories posited that attempt to explain what really happened to Darlene Foley. One theory, which has been proposed in a book written by a local family friend, with the input and support of Tom Foley himself, has suggested a link to Darlene's younger brother, Brian. To be clear, neither the author nor Tom points the finger directly at Dar's brother. The author determines that he has neither the temperament nor capabilities to hurt his sister. The spotlight was placed on him due to his past affiliations. Brian was known to drink heavily and was addicted to methamphetamine. In subsequent years, he has gotten clean, but he had been arrested for these activities prior to Darlene's murder. When questioned by police about his shotgun, Brian first stated, "I think one of my friends may have taken my gun." This statement then became, "I think someone I knew took the gun, a friend or family member." In the weeks before her murder, Dar told Tom that she wanted to speak with her mother about Brian's behavior in front of her 3 nieces. She was very close to and protective of the girls. On Tom's advice, she stayed quiet. At that time, they only knew about his drinking, which was not a serious threat. However, in the days before her death, Darlene discovered something far more concerning. Brian had, reportedly, been making meth in his home. According to reporting from years later, Brian had set up multiple labs to make methamphetamine. After discovering this, Dar no longer wanted to speak with her mother. Tom believed that instead, she aimed to go straight to the police with this new information. If this was the case, word of her knowledge could have reached the individuals dependent upon Brian's meth labs. Was it possible that one, or a handful of these individuals, took it upon themselves to break into the Foley farmhouse and silence Dar before she had the chance to speak with police? What has been named the meth mob plan is not the only theory floating around in print or online. Darlene's advocacy for her students led her to testify against potentially abusive parents in court on more than one occasion. One of these instances resulted in her taking out a restraining order against an accused father. Could this have become a motive for murder? What is certain is that the investigation failed to explore leads that were unconnected to Tom Foley. Lead prosecutor Terry Norris has stated that after Tom's release, the investigation ceased. They had their murderer, but failed to get a conviction. For county officials, that was the end of the line. In June 2017, Tom filed a lawsuit under the 2016 Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. The act provides $50,000 per year to wrongfully convicted individuals. However, the lawsuit was dismissed on legal grounds in May the following year. Tom Foley has spent years mending his relationship with his son, Heath. He now has a second child with his new wife, Anna, who happens to hold a degree in criminal justice. Tom continues to reside in Michigan. And that was the tragic and mysterious case of Thomas and Darlene Foley. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.